research question then, the central organizing research question is, are global corporations trying to remove the ability of smallholder farmers in southern Africa to control their production of food? I'd like to present data on 3 different aspects. In other words, let's look at the evidence. Let us begin to see what some of the empirical data is. I'm only giving you 3 because of time constraints. One of the joys while I was in Harare is I was like a kid in a candy shop. I kept being asked. I was working in a policy analysis unit of the Community Technology Development Trust, which is Andrew Mushita's, my co-author's NGO that works with seed. And in the policy analysis unit, I was being asked, well, can you work on this? Can you work on that? And it was just incredible because I was brought a stack of papers like this that was absolutely primary documentation on land in southern Africa. And I got to work on it for 3 weeks. It's data that governments don't have because it's coming from the grassroots NGOs. So there's much to share is what I'm trying to say, but I want to give you just 3 examples of the kinds of evidence we're looking at to try to answer if the global corporations are actually about the business of separating producers from their means of production in southern Africa. The book raises the issue, and I won't go over that, that intellectual property rights appearing in the World Trade Organization allow the patenting of living organisms, but more important, the U.S. government promotes patenting of full plant species and full animal species through its international trade agreements. So this is, from my perspective, and we have the research in the book behind it, a new form of enclosure. Enclosure of the genetic pool, not just enclosure of land. I gave a seminar on the book about biopiracy at the University of Dar es Salaam in Tanzania at a seminar of about 25 PhD students and about 3 faculty members in botany. And I was very nervous because I'm not a botanist. And so I was telling them, okay, I deal with policy, and here's what I understand to be biopiracy, and here's what we have found. And then they asked questions for about 10 minutes, and then they stayed another hour. This is 25, 28 people. And every single Tanzanian had a story, a Tanzanian botanist, of how they had been approached to give plants to this corporation or that NGO or this government. And they stayed around the table for a solid hour trying to figure out how to better resist. The Tanzanian government says no, they're very clear, but it's still stolen. It was just incredible experience for me to sit and listen of their weekly experience of the attempt to remove the genetic resources from Tanzania. One of the things I have learned and I wanted to share with you, although it's not my primary research, it's very secondary, is the book covers plants and animals. And we hadn't even thought, Andrew and I hadn't even thought, about the sea, the ocean. And a more complete table is in your handout if you have one. The reason I wanted to show you this is who's patented it. Arizona State University, okay? Right down the road. These sea animals, sea life, as the bigger chart tells you, are actually simply collected off the ocean floors off the coast of these countries, taken to the United States, and your sheet also gives you the actual U.S. patent number. So the United States is very busy not only patenting seed and plants and animals, but simply taking living sea resources off the coast. And yes, these are territorial waters. So that is one expression, one piece of evidence that we have, that privatizing living organisms doesn't just allow control over the use of these organisms for food and medicine, but it is getting very much close to trying to control global global ecological systems. If a sea hare can be patented by ASU, we have some problems. So the international laws is one piece of evidence. The other one refers to market, or what we call in Southern Africa, market forces. Because there's always been an open market across Southern Africa, but it's also always been forced. Colonialism, global corporations. What is happening is that as the US and European Union set targets for agrofuel, one of the things not discussed here or in Europe is that the US and Europe do not have enough land to meet our agrofuel goal for 2010 and 2015. There is simply not enough land in the United States or Europe. And it's like, oops, where are they going to find the land to grow corn for my car in Flagstaff? Africa knows where they're looking and what they intend to use. So it becomes, therefore, a discussion of the use of agricultural land in Africa. Many, many of the parts of the discourse sound very much colonial. One of them is, well, Mozambique's empty. There's not very many people, so we can go into Mozambique. Another one is, well, the land isn't being used anyway, so we can put it to better use. The only difference that we're finding is that the corporations will not be able to claim ownership to the land, at least not in Southern Africa. Because, for instance, Mozambique allows zero privatization of land. It came out of their liberation struggle. There is no private land in Mozambique. However, the Mozambican government can lease land for 30 to 50 years. And the corporations are going, great, we don't need to own the land. All we need to do is to control the production. So the corporations are coming into Southern Africa to cut deals. And these are simply amount of land under discussion, so we don't have access to the contracts. And saying, okay, we want to grow sugarcane for agrofuel. Mozambique, give us X amount of hectares, and then they will dictate the seed, the monoculture, the size of the production, the use of the water, the fertilizers, the pesticides, and the labor. And then what will be produced, whether it's sugarcane or jatropha or maize, will be minimally processed and then shipped north to be made into ethanol for your and my cars. This is exactly plantation agriculture of the 19th century. The negotiations are going on every day in Southern Africa, and some of the governments aren't resisting at all, you can imagine, and some are. South Africa, 650,000 hectares doesn't look like much, but the Southern Africans are horrified. Excuse us, you are not reallocating land post-apartheid, and you're talking about 650,000 hectares to global corporations for agrofuel, for Carol's car in Flagstaff. We find this horrific. A second example of enclosure that's going on. And the final one is the role of the state. And this is the United States government. When Southern Africa needs food aid, the U.S. government sends genetically modified corn in full kernels. Anyone who deals with food aid, be it rice, wheat, corn, if you send full kernels, it will get planted. That's just part of food aid. You grind the corn, and then it can't get planted. The Southern African countries in 2002 asked the U.S. government, please grind the maize. And the U.S. government said, no, we can't, it's too expensive. The State Department said it cost $25 a ton. This is 2002, when we started dropping bombs on Afghanistan and Iraq at a bit more higher cost than $25 a ton.